can come back in the polls and really try to be able to overtake former President Trump. Hallie.
Of course, the Democratic National Convention set to begin just 4 weeks from tomorrow, with a massive question now about what that convention looks like, who delivers, of course, that critical primetime speech accepting the Democratic nomination for the presidency. Kristen, I have to wonder here, and I know that our teams are still reporting this out, every time we have seen President Biden publicly over the course of the last several weeks, Kristen, he has struck a defiant tone.
Of Barack and Michelle Obama. I'm going to bear with me as I read through this.
Mike Johnson about the state of the race less than 4 months from Election Day. Plus, interviews with independent.
Charted a new course for.
Was lauded for his.
It's happening.
More Americans.
We have heard for Joe Biden and so much of the pressure.
Wrote saying they'd be dissatisfied with her
letter announcing this extraordinary decision. He mentions his vice president, Kamala Harris. He says, I want to thank my vice president, Kamala Harris, for her for being an extraordinary partner. But he makes no reference about what he will do in terms of an endorsement. Will he endorse? Will he not endorse? Will there be an open process? What happens next? He says he will talk to the nation in the coming days more about his decision. But now the Democrats have to figure out what happens. Who replaces Joe Biden as the Democratic candidate for president?
And John, you've been reporting on this for weeks now.
Breaking
and
news,
just
Joe
a few
Biden
days ago,
just
we were live
stepped
at the
down.
Republican National Convention. You broke the news about the growing pressure on President Biden to step aside, even as high as Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer. You had top Democrats that really insisted that it was time for the president to go. What was behind this growing pressure, and how was the president receiving these calls?
I will not seek re-election. Whoa, God damn, man, he looks like a ghoul. He looks like those Fallout ghouls.
Had come out publicly calling on Biden to step out. We're preparing to go public with their feeling that he needs to step out, get out of the race. This included, I am told, a significant group of U.S. senators who were making the case to Biden, making it through Schumer, in some cases making it directly, that if Biden stayed in the race, not only would he lose to Donald Trump, but he would hurt Senate candidates in competitive races. These senators did not want to publicly pressure Biden. They wanted him to make the decision for himself. But if he didn't make this decision soon, they were prepared to go public with their calls. So this is, at the root of all of this, is a concern that Biden had become so damaged following that debate some 3 weeks ago that he was going to lose to Donald Trump, which for Democrats is an extraordinary, would be an extraordinary failure. But more than that, that Republicans would win up and down the ballot. So you would have Donald Trump winning and potentially Republicans winning back the Senate and expanding their majority in the House. That's why you saw so much pressure. But the pressure was extraordinary. It was the Democratic leader in the House, Hakeem Jeffries. It was the Democratic leader in the Senate, Chuck Schumer, and it was perhaps the conscience of the party, maybe the most influential member of Congress who's not in leadership, Nancy Pelosi, all making the case privately, directly to Biden, that this was the only viable decision for him to make.
Jonathan Karl, stay with us as we continue to following these breaking news developments. I want to go right now to our chief White House correspondent, Mary Bruce, who is joining us on the phone. Mary, 40 Democrats as of today were calling on the president to step aside. You have made this point over and over again. This was the president's decision alone to make, Mary.
It absolutely was. And look, he was under tremendous pressure, and it is clear that that pressure ultimately was just too much for him to bear. We have seen over the last 3 weeks since that disastrous debate.
Now we can see it. Now they're playing all the old photos. I was wondering, where are those photos? Nigga, they playing all the right photos now. Look at his face, nigga. Go home, Biden. It's time to go to sleep.
Remarkable evolution in this public really, hemming and hawing over whether or not he could stay in this race. The president initially adamant that this was just a one-off, just a bad night, that debate, and that he could convince the American people that he could still do this, that he was still up to the task of taking on Donald Trump and governing for another 4 years. He went out on the campaign trail hard. As you know, he was out there crisscrossing the country, doing those unscripted events that so many of his doubters were demanding. He did interviews. He did that big press conference. He did huge rallies trying to show his own party that he could still handle this. But it simply wasn't enough, and the pressure just continued to grow.
Well, I didn't expect this. But now that this has happened, I don't think Donald Trump's going to win. I'm not going to lie. It's not looking good for Donald Trump.
Now we have several senators coming out, that number growing, but ultimately it was leadership, I think, that really likely tipped the scale here. The fact that you had Hakeem Jeffries, Chuck Schumer, the top Democrat in the House and the Senate, coming to him and explaining that if he stayed at the top of this ticket, he was going to drag down Democrats. And then, of course, Nancy Pelosi, the powerful former Speaker of the House, someone who does not do anything without great intention and purpose, making that argument as well. The president, we know, I keep thinking about this, Rachel, he has been spending this weekend sick with COVID, trying to recover at home, but we also know that he has been taking that time to listen, to hear out these concerns, to look over the polling. This is a president.
I ain't going to lie. People are going to pick Kamala Harris over Trump, man. I ain't going to lie to you, fam.
He is a man who thinks through everything carefully. I can only imagine what this process has been like. He said that he would only drop out if he saw the polling showed that there was no way that he could be successful in this race. And clearly he has come to that recognition. He also initially, sort of brushed off the fact that the leadership would ultimately come to him and say, this isn't going to work. And of course, we have, seen that is what happened. It is near impossible to run for president if you do not have your party united behind you. And this was likely a very, very difficult decision for Joe Biden. He has been in public service for more than 50 years, spent many decades trying to reach the White House. When he launched his second campaign, he argued it was because he had to finish the job. Even though when he first ran, he ran as a transitional candidate. He said he would be a bridge to the next generation. Then when he came out and announced he was running for a second term, it was because he felt he simply wasn't done yet. He needed more time to finish the job. That was the campaign slogan. Clearly now he has decided what he cannot beat is what none of us can beat, which is the inevitable march of time. And he is now going to be passing the torch to that next generation, Rachel.
And Mary, let me just ask you a follow-up here, because after that debate, the president was adamant that he was going to stay in the race. He was telling lawmakers, give me a week. Let me prove you wrong. Let me do some of these off-scripted events. Let me do a sit-down interview, including with our own George Stephanopoulos. And then it sort of turned into this listening tour where the president was sitting down. He was hearing from Democrats. For the American people that are watching this right now, they're going to be wondering what exactly tipped the scales for President Biden. Do we have any sense yet of how the president ultimately reached this decision?
Yeah, it's a very good question. Look, we don't have that full insight just yet into what exactly it was that tipped the scale, but we do know that he was asking for the polling. He was asking for the data. And I think when you look at the numbers, and especially when you have the leaders of the party coming to you and saying, if you stay at the top, it's going to hurt Democrats in the House and the Senate, that's a lot to overcome. Also, when it is clear that you have so many in your own party who are urging you to back out, that is very hard to put back in the box. And once voters know that so many in your party don't think this is the right move, don't think this is the right decision, it's really hard to get people united again behind you. You simply cannot do that. And, part of this is sort of, something that's bigger than numbers, something that is bigger than all the data and the polling. And that is the question about Joe Biden's legacy, which also is something that we heard from so many of those who are urging Joe Biden to drop out. He is beloved in this party. And I think so many, when we look at all of those statements, urging him to step aside and out of this race, they mentioned that. That was a steady sort of, through line through all of this, which is that they were grateful for the work that the president had done. They wanted his legacy to be intact. They wanted him, to go out with the same common cause and common purpose, which was that they want to beat Donald Trump. And they feel, though, that the best way to do that is for Joe Biden to exit the race, something that he clearly now agrees with.
Yeah, we heard those calls even from Congressman Jamie Raskin, who was saying it's time for the pitcher to get off the mound, to hear the applause from the crowd in the stands. Mary Bruce, thank you. We're going to come back to you. I want to turn now to our political director and Washington bureau chief, Rick Klein. Rick, we hear Mary talking so much about the polling and about the president's team really showing him polling on whether or not he can win in this race. How much does that influence his decision, and what more have we learned about some of the polling that has come out just in the last few hours?
The polling just in the last few hours has been devastating for President Biden, not so much in the horse race, the head-to-head, because it's going to be a close election in a closely divided country. But the battleground state polling has been particularly bad. There's been new polling out of the state of Michigan in particular that's made the rounds. And beyond that, our new ABC Ipsos poll out just today had Donald Trump's approval rating up 9 points from a month ago and its highest rating in 4 years. It appears that he got a significant bounce out of his convention and after the assassination attempt last weekend. And that's
Joe
part of
Biden
the
just
hill that
fucking
Biden would have had
dropped
to climb while
really
he's
just
losing the support of party leaders, while the polls are flipped against him. He would have had to turn all of that around and more.
That's
That
crazy.
appears to have played a major
president. But I also do think that there are a number of folks who think that President Biden deserves to have his moment, especially considering the fact he's.
Hello? You made it?
He is going to have been the man more responsible for that than anybody else in the country, having had that key role in both of those campaigns. It's just stunning.
First woman vice president, first black woman vice president, even before that. First black woman appointed to the Supreme Court as well under Joe Biden. There could still be, though, a bit of a fight, a bit of a tussle for vice president. For vice president, for under Kamala Harris. There's been a lot of talk about Kentucky Governor Andy Beshear comes from a red state, not a state that's likely going to be won by Democrats, but potentially somebody who can speak to working class voters in the Rust Belt, the Blue Wall states, somebody who could appeal to them. There's also been a lot of talk about Gretchen Whitmer, and I'd love to hear your thoughts about that, because seeing two women on a ticket going after or going up against Donald Trump and J.D. Vance after all of the testosterone we saw at the RNC last week. What are your thoughts there?
Yeah, it's a really interesting prospect. I mean, I do think, I mean, Katie, let me turn the conversation back around to you just for a second. May I interview you for a second?
Sure, go ahead.
I just said that I think that the Democrats will now not have a fight over whether or not Kamala Harris is going to be the nominee. I really see this as like, it was becoming clear that was what was going to happen if President Biden dropped out. Now with his endorsement, it just seems to me like that's done. Do you agree that that's done, or do you feel like there's any wiggle room there?
And just by the conversations that I've been having on my text messages and the statements I've seen coming in, I had lots of conversations with lawmakers about what should come next. There was a lot of talk initially that it should be an open field. They should let Kamala Harris prove herself in an open field because an anointment would weaken her, whereas a challenge would strengthen her if she came out on top. That was the reporting that Nancy Pelosi was saying in private. But the second that this was announced, I started getting a flood of "Go Kamala, go Kamala." There was also at one point a pro-Kamala document that was being shared among big Biden donors pitching her. And the more that I heard people talk about her, or the more that she was spoken of, the more that I heard big Democrats say, I think she does actually have a good chance at this. Elena Plott-Calabro wrote a great piece in The Atlantic, I'm sure you read it, about Kamala Harris and why she seemed to struggle in the first few months or first couple years of the being vice president. She wasn't being herself, essentially. She ran in 2020 in a moment when Democrats were saying defund the police. It was a very progressive moment. Law enforcement was front and center, but her whole history is of being a prosecutor, somebody who is, she says, smart on crime. You could argue tough on crime. And the question going forward is, which Kamala Harris are we going to see? Are we going to see a return to the roots, her roots as a prosecutor, as the attorney general in California, a place and a space where she is comfortable, especially running against a convicted felon? Or are we going to see the Kamala that we saw in the first couple years of the White House and maybe during the 2020 campaign? My instinct is to say that we're going to see more of the prosecutor, especially because of Rachel, who her opponent is.
Yeah, and I mean, Kamala Harris is not an ingenue here, right? Like, Kamala Harris is a known quantity. She has a long history in California politics and law enforcement. She has a substantial history as a senator, and now we've seen her operate on the national and international stage as vice president. I mean, the campaign for Kamala Harris to be the next president of the United States starts right now. I think that she will have not just a unified Democratic Party, but a turbocharged unified Democratic Party behind her. And it's funny, like, I do think you're right, Katie, that there's going to be an interesting fight about who ends up being her running mate. I don't really care. I mean, yeah, they'll pick somebody. I feel like the Democrats have a really good bench right now. And, maybe they'll pick Mark Kelly. Maybe they'll pick Pete Buttigieg. Maybe they'll pick Andy Beshear. Maybe they'll pick Gretchen Whitmer. Maybe they'll pick Raphael Warnock. I mean, Wes Moore. I don't know. Pick somebody. Maybe they'll pick John Tester. I don't know. I just feel like any of those would be great. Kamala Harris is going to be the next president.
You don't think they need to focus on Michigan, Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, and pick somebody from one of those states to ensure winning that state?
If picking somebody from one of those states ensured winning those states, then you would do it, right? But I think what they need is obviously has to be somebody who Kamala Harris believes is qualified to do the job of president, right? That's the most important qualification. Has to be somebody who's a really good campaigner. Has to be somebody who has personal chemistry with the nominee, and it has to be somebody who's got chops for both doing the job and winning the job. And I just feel like
sucks that Stay Woke TV doesn't start till tomorrow, so it's kind of
really good options. And the fact that this contest, however, she's going to make this decision, is going to be won from a position of strength.
Already here, so might as well.
Joseph Robinette Biden has officially dropped out of the race and, as I told you he would, endorsed Kamala Harris.
We're in the middle of our second shoot right now, and Joe Biden has officially chosen to drop out. So I am going to be rushing home, and I'll be live in approximately 30 minutes. I knew this was going to happen.
Campaign is canceled. I need some time to relax and bounce on. I'll announce Kamala when I feel like it. Whoo! Remember when I fucking told you guys? I said this is the most boring election cycle, but overnight it has the capacity to become the most interesting election cycle. We're there! We're officially there! This is now officially become a historic run. It went from a fucking rerun between a cadaver and a convict, both people that Americans were tired of, on both sides. Regardless of policy, people were just like on vibes alone. They were like, bro, I don't fucking care about this. I don't want to fucking dial into this. I don't give a shit about this at all. And then overnight, guys, 7 days ago, Donald Trump, 45th president of the United States of America, Donald John Trump, got shot in the ear at a Butler, Pennsylvania rally. That was 7 days ago. It feels like 8 lifetimes ago. That shit happened only 7 days ago. Think about that. The writers woke the fuck up. They thought, you know what? We gave the NBA a goddamn dud. It's because they were writing the script for this shit, dude. They literally gave nothing to the NBA final script, so they gave it all to the fucking election cycle. As my main man, Vladimir Ilyich Lenin likes to say, there are decades where nothing happens, and then there are weeks where decades happen. We are in the week where decades are happening. We are now officially in that week.
I did tell y'all it was gonna be a good election cycle, right? And I almost gave up on it, but sure and behold, in July we are here.
The week.
President Biden and the campaign running in full force until the moment that he wasn't. You know, there's no real way for you to run for president 50%. There's no way for you to sort of half be a candidate.
No,
and I think that is sort of what
you
we
can't
have
do
seen,
this. We can't do this. I cannot look at Rachel Maddow right now. I don't want to see. She's on the brink, big dog. Look at her. Look at her. She's on the brink. Step away from the ledge, Rachel. Don't fucking do it, Rachel. It's okay. Rachel is going to be all right. It's going to be all right. Don't do it.
About how exactly this race is going to unfold in the coming days and weeks. We are obviously in a really unprecedented situation, but it was important for a lot of people in the Democratic Party to hear the words coming straight out of the president's mouth that in his eyes, the person that needs to take the torch from the president, is his deputy, is the person that he chose, is the person who he said could take on the role of the presidency on day one. I was just talking to campaign co-chair Cedric Richmond, and he said there's no question about it. This is an example of President Biden doing the right thing. And he said he was really glad to hear the president coming out to publicly endorse Kamala Harris and that the campaign is going to be behind her. But sort of the machinations of exactly how the campaign is going to sort of transition over to making that sort of the campaign's operation in the coming days. Obviously, all of those things need to get figured out. But look, I think if there was a scenario where the
Bro. Immediately, they're switching up the narrative so fast. I told you. Bakari Sellers, Kamala is running against the oldest nominee for president of the United States in American history. I mean, the man is nearly 80 years old. And so the question is, can he serve another 4 years? I'm not sure he can. Now, every single one of these indecent motherfuckers straight up were like, Joe's not old. How dare you say that? Every single one. What did I tell you? I told you there's no fucking Biden or bust in this goddamn party. They're all just fucking ruthless machine politicians with bad fucking instincts. It didn't even take 30 seconds for these motherfuckers to switch up. They were trying to fucking gaslight us. Oh, Joe Biden is not going to drop out. You're out of your mind. He's actually sharp as a tack, okay? He's actually sharp as a tack. The moment that they fucking switch it up, what did I tell you? You think Harry Sisson is going to be out there? He's going to be out there being like, yeah, actually, I'm a Biden dead ender. Sorry, Biden or bust for me. I wanted a candidate that's like 800 years old, you know? Kamala's too young, too vibrant. You think that's what they were going to say? There were people in this community that were trying to tell me, Hassan, Biden is actually really popular in certain demographics, and that the media or certain aspects of the Democratic Party are really riding with Biden. Like, no, they're not. They're just careerist pieces of shit who did not make the right calculation, okay? Vindication after vindication. Put some respect on it. 2024 is the year of Hasanabi vindication so far. But I can't be the only one who's a Biden dead ender. I lied this entire time. I must reluctantly tell you that I will not be voting for Kamala Harris because I was riding with Biden. I'm the only one in America, in the United States of America, that was actually like, I need the 800-year-old carcass. I need him. I need him in my veins. I need him. Just kidding. Of course not, because I'm not a fucking idiot. All right, let's see what Bakari Sellers, who was selling us the idea that Joe Biden is fine not that long ago, what is he saying now?
Getting them, whipping them up, trying to get them on board for Kamala Harris. I don't think that's going to be a difficult task. And anything else, the vice president.
Where's Jamie Harrison? Where's Jamie Harrison? Bring him to me now. What happened? I don't want Bakari. I want Jamie. I want to see his piece of shit. I want to see that piece of shit on television on the front lines going, yeah, everything I lied about for the past like 6 months is actually, I was just lying. What are we doing? We put a motherfucker who does not know anything about campaigning, who got absolutely bodied by Lindsey Graham, who is one of the least popular politicians in Congress. Jamie Harrison dumped $100 million into that race, got fucking cumstered, and then what did the Democratic Party do? The Democratic Party went, you know what, Jamie? You're the GOAT. You're the GOAT. You lost gracefully, so you should lead the DNC. Oh my God. And what did Jamie Harrison do? For those of you who are, just tuning in, and those of you who are wondering what the fuck's going on, Joe Biden has dropped out. But these characters that I'm pointing to right now are the characters within the Democratic Party who just kept telling us a lie.